Hello, everyone. My name is Belinda. I'm an astrologer and healer and shadow work alchemist here in Los Angeles. I'm joined by Nicole Matheson, who is coming in with the tarot today. Hi, Nicole.
Hello there. So I am Nicole Matheson. I am a ritual and tarot guide. I use these tools to help people get clarity in their lives and work with doing that shadow work and connecting to spirit.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm super excited by our collaboration because really what we're doing is we're enriching our understanding of the energies that we're feeling during this time, which is sometimes a lot. And lately, it's definitely this summer, I think, with especially the Venus retrograde, we've been feeling a lot of energy. So I'm so happy to have the imagery of the tarot to enrich our understanding to help us process what's happening.
Yeah, I think it really helps to have those visuals, and it really does speak to us on that subconscious level.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing a new moon series, which helps us delve in a little bit deeper into each of the zodiac signs that the new moon hits. The new moon switches zodiac signs every single month. And that's the time when the moon and the sun actually come together and conjoin. So for this upcoming new moon, we have it in new moon in Virgo. That's happening if you're on the West Coast. That's happening September 14th at 6:39 p.m. So a little bit about Virgo before we start delving in deeply into what this exact new moon could feel like is Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury. Uh, it is the symbol that it's associated with is the maiden or the virgin. It is a mutable sign, so it is constantly moving and working things out. It is also an earth sign, so there is a sense of grounding and balance that happens with Virgo as well. It is a uh, it is a receptive or a feminine sign, so it is receiving energy. And I think when we think about Virgo energy, and I'm definitely gonna have Nicole add a lot into this because Nicole actually has a stellium in Virgo, so she's very familiar with the Virgo energy. And I have my South Node in Virgo, so it is something that I'm constantly drawing upon for myself. But when we are thinking about the Virgo energy, we're really thinking about this archetype of the healer. And Virgo is always working to improve. There is, I think the shadow side of Virgo is a sense of judgment and perfectionism because I think the ultimate goal for Virgo is to be able to do things efficiently, to execute and perform in a way that best serves. So we're really talking about service. We're really talking about devotion. We're really talking about what your sacred calling is when it comes to Virgo. And I think that when we lean too far into the Virgo energy as well, there's a tendency to self sacrifice because the bigger picture is outside of yourself. When we look at going from Leo to Virgo, we become we go from very self consumed to completely self effacing. And so there's a balance that happens right now, I think, in Virgo season, especially with the new moon, where what is it like to be devoted to yourself? And what does that energy look like when it comes directed back to yourself? Nicole, I'd love to hear what's coming up for you with Virgo.
Well, I am going to talk about it mostly from the perspective of the tarot. So, Virgo is represented by the Hermit in the tarot. And I've been talking about this a lot in my newsletter, Healing Inside Out, where the Hermit really is about connecting to your spirit. And I've been exploring this idea of what does it mean to have spiritual success? We never think about this in our culture. We're so focused on, are we making money? Do we have a home? What are our possessions? But the hermit is all about what's inside. Let's let's get rid of not get rid of the external stuff, but let's take a break from the external stuff and really connect with who we are as spirit and how we want to show up as spirit. Um, and the other part of the hermit is not really being a hermit. The hermit is really just this, it's more of a symbol of um, not being so concerned with the external. But the hermit is also, so the hermit goes in and does the inner work, but the hermit also comes back out and is a light for other people. And so there is that sense of service that you were talking about with Virgo. But it really is about learning how to connect with your own spirit and then coming back out and sharing that with others. Um, yeah, so that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think that very much leans into the mercurial nature of Virgo as well, where there's the idea that it doesn't happen isolated within a bubble. The inner work that we do, it reverberates out beyond us, right? And it really is demonstrated most when we are in contact with other people. And but what is not seen is the inner work that we're doing with our shadow, right? That we're setting aside the time for our own healing. I think that what we see on the outside for people who identify as healers is they're putting out a lot, but we're not seeing the whole depth, the iceberg, right? Underneath the
Yeah.
ocean, all the depths that are happening. And I also think the idea of really getting rid of the external or the distractions is very much in line with this new moon in Virgo energy. And I'll go a little bit more in depth into that. And I think that what's been happening for us leading up to this point, let's say the last 6 months, has been a little bit tumultuous. I think there's been a lot of change for a lot of people. I think,
Yeah.
especially the node shifting and all of these retrogrades. I think that, Venus only goes into retrograde every 18 months. So we only feel this retrograde um, every year and a half. And it goes into retrograde in that exact spot only every 8 years. So some of these themes that people might have been experiencing might have been very old wounds that came up from 8 years ago or
Mm.
16 years ago or however long in increments of 8 years. So I think there's been a lot of karma that's been brought into our scope this past six
Yes.
months. And Venus came out of retrograde um, earlier this week. And so we're recording this FYI on September 5th. So early this week, Venus came out of retrograde, and then Jupiter went into retrograde the next day. So for me, what this kind of sets up for this new moon is this idea that there's a lot of internal energy and integration that's happening during this time. Like the work isn't done, right? We also have Mercury in retrograde, and it doesn't come out of retrograde until the day after this new moon. So it is like it's coming back in. It's about really purifying yourself. Now that we've kind of gone through quite a bit of karma over the last few months, it is a process of integrating back into how do we take what we learn? How do we reassess where we were originally when we set these intentions for ourselves? Let's say back when even Jupiter went into Taurus, all of that. And how do we realign at this moment? And so being able, well, I can't say all that here. Mona says hi. The idea of purifying your vessel, of purifying your space, of really leaning into Virgo for me is very much of an energy of uh, the eloquence and minimalism,
Mm.
really. I feel like that's very Virgo energy. And so I think a lot of rituals that could be very powerful during this time could involve cleaning your space. And I mean cleaning your energetic space, cleaning your physical space, doing the housekeeping for your body. Go get make that doctor's appointment if you need to make that doctor's appointment. But it's kind of this space where we're really having to check, do we actually need all of this junk and noise that's happening in our life right now? Or what is really going to get our attention and our energy right now? What are we cutting, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that another point about the hermit that I wanted to make is the hermit does all of this work so that he can be more discerning in his life when he does go back out into the world. And so it's sort of it's aligned with what you're talking about in let's discern what we really need in our lives. Do we need all of this stuff? I'll just say personally, the past couple of weekends, I've purged so much paper out of my life. It's like I've filled half the recycling bin. I don't know why I was carrying that stuff around for so long, but it feels so good to get it out. I also just got rid of 60 books. So, yeah, there's a lot of that discerning of this isn't anything that needs to be in my life right now. And I think we forget that the stuff that we have, it is taking up space within us too. And it does make it, I think, sometimes harder for us to access the internal world when we've got all this external stuff. So yeah, I love what you were saying about Virgo is sort of this a bit of a minimalist in
Yeah.
cutting some of that stuff out. But I really do feel that that is part of the path to spirit, part of the path to internal, and getting clear on what are we doing here? What does our spirit want? What is our spirit's mission while we're here?
So true. I think that when we're really thinking about eliminating the unnecessary things in our life, we're really taking stock of our energy and how sacred our energy is. So,
Yes.
for example, if you are in work, if you started out with 5 different goals for yourself, 5 different big goals for yourself, right now is the time to really look at those goals and think, do all of these really serve me? Do all of these
Yeah.
really serve the community that I want to provide this for? And would my time and energy be best if it were funneled into one of those goals rather than all 5 of them? It's not about dispersing your energy, it's really about being able to hone in and recognize that uh, what you can manifest will be more potent if you're able to really be super clear about this is what I'm offering, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Now, this new moon that's happening on September 14th is also making conversations, and we've talked about aspects a little bit before. It's making aspects and with a few different planets. In particular, the closest planet that it's having a conversation with is Uranus, and we've talked about Uranus quite a lot in the last few months. And there is this theme when Uranus is making contact with all of these planets, it's meant to be disruptive, right? It's meant to shake things up because change can't happen unless old things are being broken down. And that
Mm.
process is very uncomfortable because we get comfortable in our routines. We get comfortable in how things are going, in the status quo, right? And Uranus says, no, 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 no. That's not how you are best serving the world. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we're constantly evolving. And so I think when we bring Uranus into this conversation, we're also thinking about how can you actively, positively disrupt your own life, right? How can you be pushing yourself in a way that leans deeper into your healing? And maybe that
Mhm.
means leaning deeper into your shadow work. Maybe that means deepening in some sort of way your relationships. Maybe it means taking those uncomfortable steps forward that you've been holding yourself back from doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so we've talked about the how Uranus is represented by the Fool in the tarot. And, we've got this archetype here who is really not that concerned with um, the norms of culture. He doesn't have a home. He's a bit of a vagrant. He's not someone who is attached to using the rational, logical mind. He is really just moving intuitively. He's got his dog here, so he's really tied to his instinct. And he might fall off this cliff, but he kind of doesn't care because he's not so concerned about failing. It's more about the journey for him. And as you were talking about that continual evolution. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. But is Uranus in retrograde?
It is in retrograde
It
in
is in
Taurus.
retrograde. So that's really interesting because we represent that in the tarot as the card being upside down or reversed. And so when the Fool is reversed, there can often be that fear of failure that's going on. And so it can really be a time to consider, well, who am I worried about seeing me fail, right? Um, and maybe I shouldn't be so concerned about that as long as I am aligning with my spiritual self in the Hermit. So it can be a really good time, and it seems like the energies are really giving us that support to do that right now. To think about why are we caring about all that external stuff, right? Uh-oh, what happened? We lost the
Yeah.
tarot here. That's
Um,
weird.
I wanted to say that it is such a Virgo energy to be afraid of the failure, right?
For
We're
sure.
talking about thinking about the product and thinking about um, doing things wrong. I think that Virgo holds tightly to that fear. And I think that now that we're bringing Uranus into this conversation and really examining those fears, we can take a moment to really question. So, what what would happen if you leaned into that fear, right? What could possibly go wrong if if honestly, like sometimes our fear holds more weight than the actuality of what could happen,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that fear is taking up space and
Hmm.
it's taking up a lot of energy. And so I think this is a time to really examine those fears and to really understand the release, the energetic release, and the space that you would have to really move forward on things if you could let that fear go. I think it's I think the question isn't just what could happen if, you failed. I think the question is what could happen if you succeeded, right? What could happen if
Yeah.
you let go of fear?
Right. Right. Yeah. If you weren't afraid to fail. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a question you see a lot. What would you do if you knew you weren't going to fail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So speaking of Mercury in retrograde, my phone just cut off.
Oh,
So not sure if I can get
yeah.
it back online here.
Okay. So funny. We're none of us are immune.
Right, right. I'm gonna see if I
uh,
can figure it out if you want to keep talking for a moment.
yeah. So a couple of other planets that are kind of coming into this conversation also are Pluto and Neptune. So we have Pluto making a trine to the new moon. We also have Neptune making an opposition. And so the additional flavor that's being added onto this new moon, it's not just disruptive, it's not just internal and really digging in deep into yourself, but Pluto adds this aspect uh, of added depth, of really going into the shadows. And so I think that anything that's come out for you from this Venus retrograde, anything that you've been able to examine, I think this new moon is really going to be a moment of reflection of how you've really been able to, how things have been different for you from now compared to 8 years ago. You know, how has your shadow work evolved you? How have you changed? I think that that's a really hard thing to take stock of sometimes when you're deep in the work, is to see how far you've come. And I think that Pluto being a part of this conversation with the new moon and the healer, I think it's time for some recognition of the depths that you have gone to and the depths that you weren't willing to go to not too long ago, right? A few years ago. And then Neptune in opposition is adding this other addition of magic and addition of mysticism. So it's a really potent time for you to be able to tap into your personal magic and to really be able to tap into your own modalities of transmuting a lot of this energy for yourself. Um, how can you continue to sustain yourself as a self healer? And what would that look like for you? What's that going to look like for you for the next 6 months from now, too? We're looking backward and forward, right? Um, okay, Nicole, I see that you're back. You're muted though. Let's see. Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, wow. So I'm going to see if I can reconnect here.
Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting what you were talking about with Pluto, because Pluto is represented by the Judgment card in the tarot. And that is such a powerful card until I get in there. Let's see. There we go. There's Judgment. So you can see we've got this angel waking these people up from the dead, basically. They've been in a coffin. And so judgment is all about waking up to a part of ourselves that we may not have even realized was there, or was a part of us that was, we either, subconsciously or consciously killed or stuffed away. But now it's being called back so that we can become more whole. And so there's some energy around supporting this, especially with the new moon in Virgo or the high priestess and the hermit, who are very much into holding space for our whole selves, getting in touch with our wholeness, our holiness, if you will, and integrating it all. And it can feel really vulnerable. Whenever you see naked people on the tarot cards, like it's a time where we can feel really raw. And there's a lot of naked people on this card.
That really speaks to me right now because I had a memory resurface for me actually the other day that I had just completely forgotten, and it added a level of depth to who I am right now, the narrative that I have of myself, just remembering that what was a very painful memory as a child, but perhaps, you know, small in passing, but me
Yeah.
recognizing the amount of weight that it really held for me. And that's a very Pluto sort of experience right there of, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that shadow, that instance really contributed a lot to the story that I have with specifically my parents. So
I love that. And so now you're getting a more full picture, a more whole picture of who you are and what is driving some of your thoughts or behaviors or patterns.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, amazing. So I'm going to just touch a little bit about how this could be affecting specific people with their charts, because not all transits or not all new moons are going to be the same weight for every single person because we all have our own individual charts. And sometimes when we have these planets moving, we call these transits, they make contact with our natal placements. So the planets where they were when we were born. And so they affect each one of us personally and in different ways. Now, I mentioned earlier that Nicole has a stellium in Virgo. So all of this, that's the sun, the moon, and Mercury that are all in Virgo right now, they're all activating all of her natal placements. And when I say stellium, that is specifically three or more planets. Okay, so she has a lot of activity that's happening there. Nicole, were you about to say something?
Well, no, yeah, I was just going to ask you to explain what a stellium is because it was sort of a new term for me not that long ago. But yeah, I have 5 points in planets, I think, in Virgo. So yeah, there's a lot going on in there.
You got your sun, you got Mercury, you got Mars there, you got Pluto there. You also have your South Node
South Node.
there. And then I also take a look at Lilith, and you have Lilith there as well. So you have quite a few bodies in Virgo. And these are all happening in your second house. And so your second house is associated with, some people consider it resources. The way that I've started to interpret the second house is what is substantial for you in your life. And so these things are really important to you that anchor you this into this world, whether that's like your corporal body, whether that is a matter of finances or how you're able to support yourself. Um, those are all things that are covered in the second house. And so those might be highlighted during this time. And so because you have so many different planets, it's hard for me to get into what that could mean for you because it's a little bit complicated because you have so many different energies that are happening right now. But I imagine that you feel a lot of energetic movement right now during Virgo season.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Not gonna lie.
So if you might have some planets in Virgo, you might also be feeling certain things a little bit more intensely with this new moon in Virgo. And intensely is not necessarily a bad thing. Things just might be highlighted or more pronounced for you with Virgo. So if your sun, your moon, or your rising signs in Virgo, especially, you might be feeling that a little bit more potently, or even Mars and Venus in Virgo. And some of the other signs that might be a little bit might be feeling this new moon in Virgo a little bit more potently is if you have any prominent placements in the other mutable signs. So what that means is Gemini or Sagittarius, you're gonna be having a square with this new moon. So there's a little bit of tension that's happening. And tension just basically means change. So there might be some shifts for you. There might be some pivots that are happening for you if you have some Gemini or Sagittarius placements. And then if you have some placements in Pisces, which is going to make an opposition to this new moon, you might feel a little bit, stuck. You might feel a little bit at a standstill. This might be a really good time for you to go and lean more internally into your energy and really delve into the subconscious and really delve into what's happening underneath all the waves. So those 4 signs, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, that's where you might be feeling it the most. But this could be affecting other parts of your chart too. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So we are coming towards the end of our recording. I think we've talked a lot about the energies that are happening, who might be affected, certain rituals that could happen. Basically, just cleaning house, whatever that means for you, really taking stock of what's super important for you and simplifying, I think is a really good use of this new moon and Virgo energy. Is there anything you'd like to add there, Nicole?
Yeah, I think just continuing to do that inner work and getting clarity so that you can be more discerning as you're doing that cleaning of house, whether it's your physical house or maybe it's your social house. Maybe it is your spiritual house. Maybe there are some beliefs that you've been carrying around, maybe from your family that no longer feel like they belong to you anymore. So yeah, continuing to do that inner work so that you can be more discerning about what is yours.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense because I think Virgo also can get very stuck in their head about certain things. And it's good to take a step back and look at the bigger picture too, that it's not either or. It's not just the inner work and it's not just what we're putting out into the world, but it's really an integration of the two, right? And they feed
Hmm.
into each other. And so understanding that, um, going back to this archetype of the healer, to be a healer, you have to heal yourself first, right?
Right.
And so really taking a lot of those ideas and really expanding upon them so that you can hold space for the full consciousness of all of that rather than becoming fixated on the details, which Virgo can tend to do.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think this concludes our recording for the new moon in Virgo. We hope that everyone has a beautiful healing reset with this new moon. It's such a great time to come back to yourself and just a reminder to go into your inner world. So take this as an opportunity, as an invitation to really attend to yourself first. Okay. Any last words, Nicole?
No, it sounds good. Sounds like a great new moon.
Amazing.
I'm here for
Okay.
it.
Everyone, everyone take care out there. Thank you.
Bye.